systems the city is reviewing, a brief review of the city's most recent election history, and provides several ways for residents to share their comments and feedback. The Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 was landmark legislation that was born out of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. The legislation enforces the 14th and 15th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution that guarantee equal protection under the law and instituted national protections for voting rights. The Act prohibits any state or local government from imposing voting laws that result in discrimination against racial or language minorities. Examples of past voter discrimination include imposing restrictions on an individual's ability to vote, such as the requiring of literacy tests, moral character tests, or poll taxes. In 1985, the Supreme Court ruled that there are 3 conditions that must be met to prove minority voters have had their rights violated. Number 1, the affected minority group is sufficiently large enough to elect a representative of its choice in a specific geographic location. Number 2, that the minority group is politically cohesive and would likely vote similarly. And number 3, the white majority voters vote sufficiently as a bloc to usually defeat the minority group's preferred candidates. The California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA, expands upon the Federal Voting Rights Act. The CVRA provides additional statewide protections for Californians. The most significant being that the CVRA makes it easier for minority groups to prove their votes are being diluted by at-large elections. The CVRA eliminated one of the 3 federal conditions needed to prove voter disenfranchisement, that the affected minority group is sufficiently large enough to elect a representative of its choice in a specific geographic location. This difference between the federal and state law makes it easier for plaintiffs to assert that a violation has taken place and issue a challenge letter or file a lawsuit against local governments. Such challenges typically seek the elimination of an at-large elections system where it is asserted that a voting rights violation has taken place. It is important to note that when plaintiffs are successful, the local agency must initiate the process to transition its election system within 90 days. Since its passage in 2002, CVRA has promoted 2 decades of change in the California election process. In all, 216 school districts, 34 community college districts, 137 cities, 35 water and other special districts, and all county boards of supervisors statewide are now electing representatives by district. Prior to 2002, only 29 of California's 482 cities elected council members by district. In less than 20 years, that number has jumped to more than 160. Many of the jurisdictions noted here transitioned to by-district elections voluntarily, but others have changed after receiving a CVRA challenge notification. In September 2021, Cypress received a challenge letter on behalf of the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project and its members residing in the city of Cypress. The challenge alleges that the city's current at-large election system for city council is racially polarizing and results in the vote dilution specifically of Asian voters. The challenge asserts that the city is in violation of the CVRA. CVRA challenges are complex and difficult to defend. They can also be very expensive to the defendant. When cities lose such challenges, they are responsible for both their own legal expenses and those of the plaintiff. The city of Cypress is currently assessing the merits of the CVRA challenge. To date, the city has not found any merit to the allegation that it is in violation of the law. The City Council is carefully reviewing its current electoral process and is seeking expert advice on next steps. This includes an initial demographic study of the city's population, past election history, and willingness to defend against a challenge. The city is also seeking community input through these public forums. Furthermore, in many cases, cities that have not changed the election process voluntarily faced formal lawsuits that changed the election process involuntarily and without community input. All of these elements are being reviewed and weighed as part of the deliberative process. The decision the City Council must make is whether to remain in an at-large election system or transition to a by-district election system. The City of Cyprus currently utilizes the at-large election process. What are at-large elections? In an at-large election, candidates campaign for elections citywide. All Cyprus voters elect all the council members. For example, if 3 council seats are up for election, Cyprus voters select 3 candidates. Candidates may live anywhere in Cyprus. Candidates who are elected represent the entire city. It is important to note that at-large election systems are typically the trigger for a Cbra challenge. Alternatively, if Cyprus holds district elections, the city may be equally divided by population into city council districts. Voters will no longer be able to vote for all of the seats on the city council, as occurs with the current at-large election system. Instead, they will only be able to vote for the seat that represents their particular district. In addition, candidates must live in the district which they hope to represent. Candidates run and campaign in the district where they live, not citywide. District voters choose one candidate to represent them. For example, if 3 council seats are up for election, voters select one candidate to represent their district. Voters in other districts would do likewise. Because not all districts are up for election at the same time, there may be some years where cities do not have a city council election. There are several different types of district elections, and as previously noted, single-member district elections are the most common. Voters in a district elect a single candidate to represent them. Other examples include the Orange Unified School District, which utilizes an at-large by-district process. All voters may vote for all open seats on the ballot regardless of trustee area. However, candidates must live in the trustee area they hope to represent. Another example, cumulative voting, means voters may cast as many votes as there are seats up for the election. For example, if 3 seats are up for the election, a voter may cast all 3 votes for a single candidate or distribute those 3 votes among multiple candidates. The candidates with the highest cumulative number of votes are elected. Should the city decide to change its current process, there are many district options to review. In the months to come, the City Council must determine whether it wishes to defend or accept the challenge. In either case, the City of Cyprus will seek public input and feedback from the community. It is important to the Council that community voices are heard. This community input will include a robust community outreach effort, multiple public forums, and online information. Following this public input process, the City Council will begin their formal deliberations, which will include public hearings as part of regular City Council or special meetings, final deliberations, and a vote by the City Council at a regular or special meeting. The City of Cyprus is not alone in this issue. As noted previously, many cities have changed their voting systems in the past 2 decades. Many others have opted to defend against Cbra challenges, but the cost can be high. To date, Santa Monica has spent more than $10 million in legal fees defending against their Cbra challenge. If they are unsuccessful, they will also be responsible for the plaintiff's legal fees by Cbra mandate. Based on the initial assessment by the demographer, it has not been established that Cyprus is in violation of the Cbra. This is not unusual. Many cities have faced similar issues. The demographer examined the city's demographics and all city council elections from 2012 to 2020. In the initial assessment, the demographer noted that there are few precincts to analyze, from a maximum of 63 to a low of 36. That previous elections all involve voters with multiple votes and many candidates, and that there are no homogeneous Asian voter precincts. The maximum precinct has only 35.5% Asian voters. This means the estimates are not reliable and require further study and more data. As part of the deliberative process, the City Council will discuss the matter fully. Next steps may include a more detailed and in-depth demographic analysis. However, even when inconclusive, cities are presumed to be in violation unless they can prove otherwise. As previously shown, the cost to defend and possibly lose a CVRA challenge are very high, often running in the millions of dollars. According to the most recent 2020 census data, Cyprus is a diverse community with a total population of 50,151. As shown by our current demographics, the Cyprus community is comprised of primarily whites, Asian Pacific Islanders, and Latinos. The following Cyprus election history underscores the complexities of the issue. The city's CVRA challenge specifically referenced Asian voters and the possibility of racially polarized voting and/or vote dilution for this protected class. Using historical election data, the demographer conducted an initial study to ascertain if a violation had occurred relative to Asian voters. In Cyprus's case, the data is unclear. For example, in the 2020 and 2018 elections, candidates who won were favored by voters overall, including Asian voters in at least one instance. However, in each of these years, there was also one other candidate who was preferred by Asian voters who was not elected. Because not all candidates preferred by Asian voters lost, the results are deemed inconclusive. If Cyprus chooses to move to district elections, the city is committed to an open and transparent process. A public process would begin to draw the maps outlining each district. Map drawing tools would be available online for anyone to create a map for consideration. Public meetings would be held to explain the guidelines and principles for drawing a map. Maps can also be created during these public meetings. With public input, similar maps may be combined. Typically, 3 or 4 final maps may emerge for public comment and council deliberation. Several key principles are used in the districting process. Districts must include communities of interest, be compact, be contiguous, have visible natural or man-made boundaries, include respect for past voter selections, and plan for future growth. CVRA challenges may impose additional considerations during the districting process. When a CVRA challenge is issued asserting minority dilution, that population will be taken into special consideration when districts are created. When possible, a majority, minority, or plurality district will be created to ensure those voters' preferences are not diluted. It is not always possible to craft such a district if, for example, the minority group is dispersed throughout the city. So, what are the characteristics of the at-large election system? First, all voters vote on all available city council seats. City council candidates can live in any part of the city, and the elected city council members represent the entire city and answer to all city voters. Alternatively, in a by-district election system, voters elect a single district representative. Candidates must live in the district they are running to represent, and the elected city council members represent their local district on the city council and answer to their district voters. The city is very interested in hearing from the community during this public outreach period. To submit a comment or question, you may do so during the public forums. You may also submit a question online to the city email address cbraforum@cypressca.org. In addition, the city has created an online survey, and you may visit the city's website to participate. This is an important and momentous decision for our city, and it is only through the participation of all Cyprus residents that our city council can make an informed and judicious decision as we plan for our municipal future. You can learn more at www.cypressca.org/election system. This is an important and momentous decision for our city, and it is only through the participation of all Cyprus residents that our city council can make an informed and judicious decision as we plan for our municipal future. You can learn more at www.cypressca.org/election system.
Well, Mr. Mayor, hopefully that gives our community a really good grounding in what we're talking about tonight. And now we have some really important announcements before we jump into Q&A to make sure everyone has an opportunity.
That's right, Ariana. We want to remind everyone how they can participate. If you're joining us by Zoom, please use the buttons in the Zoom to post your questions. If you're watching via Facebook Live or YouTube Live, use the chat features to post your questions or comments there. We will try to read and answer as many as we can during this program. Those we cannot answer tonight will be posted and answered on the city's website at www.cypressca.org/election system.
Well, since the public forums were announced, the city had on the website an email address where people could post questions. So for the last couple of days, we've had some coming in. So we're going to start off with those.
Okay.
So I'll read the first one. And once I read this, it is more of a comment. So this is from Melissa Murray. My biggest concern over dividing the city into voting districts is the loss of unity. Council members will be most concerned about their district and pleasing those that vote rather than what's best for the entire city. One of the beautiful things about Cyprus is that it is a small, big town. I would be disappointed to see it lose that and to see more division and wrangling instead of moving forward for what's best for all in our community. So thank you, Melissa, for posting your comment. The next is from David Burke. And David asked if he could use the email address to comment. So for going forward, I left this in there, David, because it's a great question in order to let everybody know if you have comments going forward, if you have questions going forward, please use the email address because we're going to be using that to continue filling out the FAQs. We may pose those questions in the next public forum, which tonight we're virtual, but the next two are live in person. So thank you for your question, David. You may have to help me with this. David Halami, I believe. I hope I got that right. And I apologize, David, if I got it incorrectly. I wanted to express my opposition to changing our voting systems for Cypress City Council to a district-based system. Cypress is a small community. By dividing into districts, it will create division, constant arguing over where the lines will be drawn. Candidates and members will not have an interest in helping the entire city of Cypress. Instead, they will want to spend their time ensuring that they are in a district where they have enough supporters. For large cities like Los Angeles, district-based voting makes more sense, but not for our little community. There is already enough division in our nation and our state. A person who is voted into office needs to understand that they are there to help the entire city, not just a few square blocks. Thank you, David, for your comments. The next comment is from Edwin Kramer. And would you like to take this one, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I'm going to give you this, actually.
Okay.
So these are the ones that came in early.
So Mr. Kramer writes that I am concerned that the city has not complied with the California Voting Rights Act. We should be complying. We should have granular and specific representation for the distinct areas of our city. There's been a growing concern by the citizens that the council is out of touch with the direction and needs of the community. The design of the new Lexington facility would have been different if a fair representation of affected residents were in place. More inventive strategies for RENA compliance that fit in, which is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, a requisite by the state of California on all cities, would be compliance that would fit in local communities, would have been brought forward in time for compliance solutions if connected leadership were in place. There have been several major recreational, residential, or industrial installations that would impact one part of the city more than the others. All this would be better managed with citizen representation. There is simply too much power and influence centered around an arbitrary kernel of the city. We need to intentionally distribute this influence and representation over the population. Local districting would resolve a lot of the imbalance. Further, the council has been meeting in private on this districting California Voting Rights Act issue and not vetting direction with the citizens that they are theoretically representing. How is that even possible? If the council is deliberating a legal battle with the state of California on this issue, they should stop now. We do not want an expensive legal battle over this. Just comply. So there are many issues that Mr. Kramer brings up. Let me go to one towards, RENA. So the regional housing needs assessment, like many things, and in fact, I've heard that question before, what's the hardest part of my job or any council person's job? And that's dispelling misinformation. People hear only parts of a comment or parts of an issue, and they take off with that. And in this particular case, when we first brought up the information of these RENA requirements by the state, people presumed that we would all of a sudden level certain areas of the city. We were going to break ground on new housing developments, and that couldn't have been farther from the truth. What the RENA requirement was simply that we had to identify areas of our city where we could possibly build additional homes, housing units, should that need arise. And we spent a lot of time in just dealing with that. So,
well, and I know that Cyprus isn't the only city that has had consternation over the RENA numbers, but I wanted to just make a clarification on one item that Mr. Kramer said. He had asked at the end of his, or he had posted in the end of his comments that we would be in a fight with the state, or the city of Cyprus would be in a fight with the state. And just to be clear, in the initial challenge, it's actually with a plaintiff who comes forward.
correct.
So we do have somebody who has written a letter through a legal firm representing an organization. So it's not with the state of California. And I just wanted to make that clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Correct. Yeah, the Voting Rights Act is through the state of California, but it is this attorney through a party that they represent that has alleged that the city has violated that California Voting Rights Act.
Correct.
So we're not taking on the state. What we're doing is responding to this allegation that the city has violated the California Voting Rights Act. And we're a long ways, quite honestly, from that. And that's largely why we are here. It is not a simple topic. It is something that does require, Mr. Kramer brings up that we've been meeting in private and making all the decisions. It's not an issue of meeting in private and keeping things secret. I think anytime you're faced with something that's important, you don't come right out and all of a sudden, this is what we're going to do. These meetings have been simply to understand what the challenges are, what's before us, what do we need to do? Is there in fact a violation? In fact, one of those many steps that we as a city council did was to contact a demographer, a person that basically looks at all of this data and even start to explain, is there any substance to this alleged violation? And that was just the start. And that's where we're at. We're still at the start of this whole process.
And as it was noted in the video, where we are right now is that it's very much, the demographer came in and did an initial assessment. So, so now we're going to be, there's still many layers, as you mentioned, which goes to the next question that I have. And this is from Mary Osendorf. Please provide a map of a breakdown of the council districts and the ethnic numbers per district. So I'm sorry, this is from Leanne Ossendorf. Leanne, this is actually a fabulous question, but we don't have these answers just yet.
Correct.
In fact, this would be probably step 20 of 40 different steps. If the city decides to go to districts, this would definitely be a part. This question would be answered because we would start building maps.
That's correct. And in fact, that's where, yes, the citizens, the residents of Cyprus would clearly get an opportunity to see what these districts would look like. Part of calling and contacting a demographer is for them to tell us what the lay of the land is, where the particular groups are, where this diversity is at, and if they are in fact in pockets of the city. But we are such a long ways from that right now. We're still trying to, part of what this process is, and certainly the presentation we're doing and the ones to follow will be to let people understand what the California Voting Rights Act is, what this challenge is before the city. But we're also doing this to provide the residents with a very unbiased explanation of what does it mean to vote at large versus what does it mean to vote in districts.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're here.
So I will go to the next question that we've gotten through the forum tonight. So I'm sorry. Can you scroll it down? Thank you. Okay, so the first question that we got through the public forum is, why is the city spending so much money on hiring a consultant to do these presentations when they couldn't spend money on holding a special election when filling Councilmember Barry's vacant position? Rationale was given that a special election will cost too much money, $200,000 to $250,000 approximately, yet the city council is willing to spend just as much on a consultant to try and convince the public that single member districting is not good, and then they will still have to pay millions of dollars for a lawsuit. So there's a couple of things in there, but and obviously as a council person, you know, our residents are always concerned about the taxpayer dollar that we spend. But Mr. Mayor, let me ask you, why is it so important to get the public feedback?
Well, quite honestly and very directly, that's why we were elected. Our job, we were elected by certainly the residents. We were elected by all of you. And it's very much an honor, but it is very much, there is a lot of tasks, there's a lot of work, there are many things behind it. And the reality is there are so many as time goes on. This is the start of my 8th year in office, and I can't tell you the number of topics. And I can't possibly know how the public feels on every single one of them. And so certainly when we have very involved topics like this one, we're going to reach out to the public, especially since this is one that requires input from all of them. And it is very important that we understand what people are thinking. You know, the amount that we're spending isn't anywhere near what they're talking about. And we haven't even decided whether we're challenging it. We want to hear from the residents as to, do we challenge or don't we? Here's the information we have. We want you to look at it, see it, and tell us what your thoughts are, and we'll go from there. And the reality is, there are some of these things that people, like in the question alone, they're saying that we're here to tell you that why it's better to vote in single districts or not. No, we're here to give you the information unbiased. Yes, we can all have opinions, but our responsibility is to represent the citizens of Cyprus in the best manner possible. And that means wherever and whenever we can to get their input.
And another point I would like to make, just as, you know, from a council perspective, it is important. There are people who feel strongly on both sides of this issue. So with that, it is important that everybody get a chance to have their voice heard on both sides.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many different facets to just this particular topic. One of them that we even introduced, and that is, it's available in different languages. It's available on different websites. It's available in many different ways so that we can reach as many of the residents as possible, simply because we know there are so many facets. Some of you work days, some nights, some weekends, some work from home, some work from their office. There are many. And so we're trying to reach as many as possible. But that's just an example of everybody will have, and you're right, there's going to be some for, some against. Let's hear from everyone.
And by front loading some of this process, again, regardless of what the final decision is, then we'll be able to move quickly one way or the other. Would that be true?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. You know, I guess one analogy would be, you know, when you went to go buy your house, if that's what you went and did house hunting, you didn't just go look at the first house you saw. You didn't buy it by color. You didn't buy it because it had a swimming pool. You looked at many things. People look at its location, the city, the school district. They look at the shopping. What are the amenities in the area? So folks, you didn't run out and quickly go to the bank and say, here's my deposit or my down payment I want to buy. There are many factors, and this is just one of them. And so we have a lot to do. But once we start to gather all of this information, then we can make a better, but more importantly, informed decision. And that's the purpose behind all of what we're doing.
And we'll get back to some of that, like what that process is as we kind of wind down on questions, but we still have more.
Yes.
So the next question is, what is the opinion of our attorney on the chances of defending our current voting method? Has anyone ever successfully defeated a Cbra challenge? A great question, and kind of a tough one to answer. It's not tough to answer, but sometimes it can be tough when you realize what that is. Now, I don't know of any city attorney who gives odds, but
Correct.
I believe the city attorney has made it clear, just historically, what some of the prospects are when you defend against a CBRA challenge.
Well, one of the, in the presentation that was made, there were a number of cities that we showed information as to where they're at, what has happened in their particular challenges or the particular situations. The attorney is telling us that it is for us to decide. It is for the residents to decide. And again, that's why we're here. I can't say that enough times. But the reality is, no, they're not giving us, your chances are 3 to 1 of winning this. We're looking at the real numbers. But one of the biggest things is, are we in fact keeping down or not giving a particular community within our city, a particular group, ethnic group, from having fair representation? And those are some of the things. Certainly it'll come out. This again is just part, the demographer already gave us a good amount of information, not anything that we can already see, but again, that's not everything.
Right. Right. And it goes to the next question, which is how much will it potentially cost the city to defend? So again, you noted in the presentation, we give some of those numbers. So to answer the first question goes into the second question, which is it can cost a great deal of money to defend against one of these challenges. And I have to say, I think to my knowledge, no one to date, no city has successfully defended against a CBRA lawsuit if it goes to court. And Santa Monica is the only one, I think, that hasn't been decided. They've gone back and forth a couple of times.
I think actually there's 2 cities, and you're right. I know Santa Monica is one. I think Huntington Beach is actually the other. But there are a couple of cities that, and yeah, even then, the fact that theirs hasn't been decided is just that. It has been decided. And the monies and the costs to continue putting that forward continues to add up.
And that's a really big part of this discussion. I know it will be a big part of the discussion for the council. So, for example, we just mentioned Santa Monica. Santa Monica is now, their total legal bill is up over $10 million at this point and they've gone through several levels of legal ballots. They went through the initial, then they did an appeal. So their bill is rather high.
There are many things. I'm trying not to stray off of what our topic is here this evening, but I can remember talking to a resident a few years ago when it came to a development. And this particular resident even pointed out, they said, look, you should be voting no to deny that conditional use permit to allow them to build. And I explained to that particular resident, so that as long as they meet all city, county, and state building codes, and as long as all of this falls within, that if we deny their permit, they can sue us. And that resident said, yeah, I understand that. And you understand that we'd lose in court to the tune of $6 to $8 million. Yes, I understand that. And so you're saying that I should still deny that permit. And that resident said, yes. Well, that's difficult because my job is looking at that as well. That's not why I was elected. I was elected to make the best decision for all of the residents, all of the city, and certainly the way the monies are spent.
Right.
And that's a big issue here. We may see that people don't want us to go into districts, or they may. What's it going to cost? There's a lot of information gathering that we still have to do.
Absolutely. And just to finish out this question, to give you some idea of the cost, the city of, we mentioned the city of Santa Monica, but the city of Palmdale, $4.7 million, city of Modesto, $3 million, city of Anaheim, $1.1 million, Santa Barbara spent $600,000, and West Covina spent $220,000. So it can have a very hefty price tag.
Correct.
Yes. So the next question, will there be sampled ballots to view? Can we submit our own map? So I'm going to break that down into 2 questions because they're both great questions. So thank you to whoever submitted these. We're going to do 2 more public forums, but we could certainly create a sample ballot of just what it might look like so you could see how that voting might work.
And of course, they're not going to have any real names
No,
because
they'll be
we're
all
not
John
in,
Does,
right.
all
They're all
John Does.
in John and Jane Does because
Right.
we don't know who it is. We don't know what portion of the city. Do we have 2 districts within the center part of the city? So the bottom line is, yes, we can create sample
Yeah,
maps.
it's actually a really good suggestion.
It is a good question and something that we could probably do. But again, everything is theoretical,
Right.
because we're a long ways from coming to anything
Right.
very formalized.
So the next question is our city large enough to break it down into districts? So another great question. Every city is pretty much small enough to break down into districts. The question becomes that is it large enough to break into districts that meet CBRA requirements, so that don't continue the alleged violation, that allow communities of interest to stay together. So that would certainly be something that like a second demographic view or in drawing maps that we would be looking at very carefully.
Yeah, I mean, to use a city, and I'm not going to go into great detail because I don't know their particular history, but the cities of Garden Grove and Westminster are an example. As time went on, you had a larger Asian population start to, over the years, start to increase and grow. And there's a perfect example that at what point did the Asian communities in both Westminster and Garden Grove start to become a majority, or certainly in certain pockets of that city? And that's what the CVR, the California Voting Rights Act, is intended to help support, so that these particular communities are not so they're not stepped on or overlooked, and they're given that opportunity to select a representative of their choosing. So yes, I mean, in answer, is Cyprus big enough for that? Yes, we are. Just depends on where our demographics turn out.
Absolutely. The next question, with district elections, what would happen if no one within a district wanted to run? That's a really interesting question.
It is, and again, it's another hypothetical because we don't have districts, so that might be something we certainly would have to address, and legislation we would have to bring up. But one of those would be, that's where you come up with appointments, similar to as one of the others, I believe that was Mr. Kramer, talked about when Councilwoman Berry stepped down because of her relocating out of state. Something that we can do, but appointments certainly is one of them. But again, we're not there yet.
Right. So for example, it might be that if you did decide to go to districts, and once districts were created, at the same time, you might need to look at the city charter and make sure everything is aligned.
And up to date. Yes,
Correct.
Very much so.
Okay. The next question, has the city reached out to Cypress Elementary School District to understand how they moved into districts? Can we just adopt their district map? Another interesting question.
So actually, we have contacted the Cypress Elementary School District. We've talked to them because we are aware that they ended up doing that. But the reality is we can't simply adopt their district map for a number of reasons. One, it was their work. But number two, their map is different. It goes beyond the city limits, right? Part of it is Los Alamitos. I mean, if you look at Cyprus, there's a part that's actually in Buena Park. So it isn't a matter of just adopting their district map. But yes, it is someone in an area, another person that we contacted, yes.
Next question, and thank you all first, by the way, for submitting questions.
Correct.
We have a lot now, and so we're very grateful. If the city transitions to a by-district election system, can former city council members who already served 2 terms now be able to seek election in a new system? That is a fantastic question, and one that I have very personal knowledge of, actually. So,
well, is you know, and your perspective is going to be terrific, and I'll let you respond to that too, because in Cyprus, the answer to that one is simply no, because currently our city charter allows and has it to where a council member runs or serves 2 terms, 4 years each, a total of 8 years. And once they're done, they are done. There are other cities, and I'll just use the one to our west, Los Alamitos. Los Alamitos has to where you can serve 2 terms, you sit out a cycle, which would be 2 years, and then you're eligible to run again. But Cyprus currently does not have that sort of a system.
oh, interesting.
And so the reality is, with another issue that we would have to address, if that was something that needed to occur or would occur, or if that's even support. And importantly, so that we get this out, so that there is no misinformation. That would also go to a vote of the residents. It's
Oh.
not something that you have 5 council members that simply make this decision on their own in a secret meeting, tap, tap, and who's it? Folks, these are all these things that we bring to you, the residents, because it clearly affects all of you in your daily lives.
So just to be clear, so in Cyprus, this way the policy reads now is that 8 years and you're done.
8 years, correct.
Okay, so, and I know in Anaheim, they do it a little different, and in the city of Orange, when we moved to districts, we had a council member who was a sitting council member, termed out, but did challenge, ran and was elected, and was challenged that he had met that 8 years. And the judge decided that you met the 8 years, that was it, you were done, you had to sit out for 2 years. So the legal issues don't necessarily go away once you make a final decision. Lots of these things have to be figured out even more so.
Yeah, and the reason I knew a response to that one is because we're already listening. I mean, it's not like we go home and we sit, trust me, our pagers go out, our phones go out, people text us, people email us. And that's a question that had already come up. And it is something that we're well aware of. And we already know that, yeah, anything like that would certainly go to a vote of the residents.
Right. Next question, how will by-district voting affect the current city council makeup? Where are all the current council members located? Great question. Obviously, it's not something we're gonna speak to right now in terms of where everybody lives, but in terms of the current makeup, I can provide kind of what's happened in other jurisdictions, which is you typically, if you decide to go to districts, then you implement those districts over time. So you would pick, sometimes you could literally be picking out of a hat or drawing straws, which districts, once districts are set, are going to go up for election first. Typically that coincides with council members who are terming off or rolling off. And then so it's 2 years and you vote, then 2 years and you vote. So that's how they you get to all districts. It's rare that it's everybody at once, because you don't ever elect everybody at once.
Well, at the same time too, a council member has all this institutional knowledge.
Correct.
And you would hate to lose those people just like that because we've now moved into districts. And so you want to transition to this, to where you're keeping those people that have that experience, that have that knowledge. And as you move through it, yes, in time. Now, as soon as I say that, does that mean that's what we're doing? No, folks, we don't know because we're not there yet. But that is all a part of the decision. And you can already see, as we pointed out, there are many facets to moving into districts if that's what's ultimately decided. It is not anything that's going to be done in the next 30 days, in the next 6 months. It takes time.
Right. Absolutely. The next question is, will the demographer's assessment, not just slides, be made public? Where will it be posted? Good question. I think that if I'm not mistaken, much of that information is still under the closed session protections, is it not?
Right. Well, we even, if I remember right, on some of the information we pointed out, showed a little bit about which council members receive percentages of certain ethnicities. So the information is out there. And if it comes down to it, yeah, we'll show you that information simply because we want all of you to make the best informed decision possible. It's not like we, make these decisions just okay, that's it, it's that simple. No, we also want you to make the best informed decision possible, and we'll get you the information when we can and where we can.
Next question. Our city has grown significantly since the at-large system was established. In order to have equal representation on the city council from all areas of our city, it's time to transition to district voting. So that's more of a comment. So
Right.
Thank you very much for submitting your comments. Next question. What do we lose by changing to districts? Good question. Again, some of that's going to be just subjective in terms of how people feel about it. And I know there's very different feelings about that.
Well, yeah. Even to go back to one of the earlier comments that was made, somebody said that it'll be partisan or we already have too much of fighting. Even now, all of your council members don't always agree on all of the topics. And if we were to be in districts, clearly your council would still work together because it is the business of the city. It's the continuation, it's the growth, it's the sustainability, it's that pulse of the city that you always want to continue in the best manner possible. And for one district to completely branch off and not have it, no, folks, granted, you would be voting on just one particular person, the person that lives in the area, that the district that you live in, but all of your council representatives, your council people would still work together. You have the staff that works, they're the ones that do the work every day in and day out. They're the ones that are there to make sure that the business of the city is handled in the best way possible. The city manager, your directors, your staff, everyone there, your various agencies and departments, everyone there that is there to deliver the services of the city. Your council people are there to make sure that they're also given what they need to put their best foot forward.
And I know on the flip side too, that other people can feel that within a district system, that their council member is very close to them. So one of the aspects that they list in terms of districting is that you could walk from precinct walking when you're during the election, that you could walk your whole district. So that you're really closer to the people. So there's pros and cons on both sides.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when I walked door to door through the city, before I was elected, and just about everyone knows, I had worked for the city of Cyprus Police Department for just over 25 years. And certainly I drove those streets, every single one of the streets in the city. But I have to tell you, when I was campaigning and walking door to door, yeah, it is certainly a different perspective. And by going to districts, yeah, you certainly get to know one area very well. And the residents in those particular areas would certainly know you. You'd be accountable to them. And it wouldn't mean that that person is also limited to just the issues in that area. It's citywide. When you start coming to a major development or things that'll happen, yeah, they're going to vote about all of those things that affect the city as a whole.
Right. Next question. With at-large voting, I have a say on all of the council members. With district voting, I feel like I would have less of a voice. I think that's just a comment. So thank you for posting your comments. Next question. What are the criteria you are using to decide the change in voting? How do you feel we will have more representation? I don't feel my voice is always heard. How would this change your communication within the community? My concern, that is my concern at the moment, I think. Oh, my concern at the moment is the trash hike fee. So we've talked a little bit about this in terms of how representation might change.
Yeah, so there's obviously a number of questions here. So let's start at the beginning. So the criteria used to decide the change in voting is going to be based on that issue with what does the demography show? How is the community broken up? If we go to districts, we'll have to discern that. And I remember that one of our others posed a question earlier about would you be able to see the maps? Yes, you would. And that's going to be a clear answer to what the representation would be. You're asking about how would this change your communication with the community? Well, certainly if you go to districts, that particular council person would be certainly contacting the people in their particular district. And also, yeah, they have that opportunity. You finish your question with, my concern at the moment is the trash hike fee. Again, another example of this is one where only some of the information gets out, some of the misinformation gets out, and we're here for particularly the California Voting Rights Act. But here's another one, and I have always told people, contact City Hall. This way you get the information.
But it's a good example of an issue that affects all the cities.
Correct.
So all council members vote and deliberate on it, regardless of a district.
And in this particular case, just so that I can answer that as one of those things, this is something that is being mandated by the state to every city in the state of California. It is not just Cyprus. Trust me, many of these cities don't want to have to see this particular program. Okay, so the state legislators that are there made this decision that this was in the best interest for everyone in the state. Okay, this change comes at a cost. And we, like every other city, are trying to figure out the best way to manage that cost.
My goodness, we haven't had that debate yet here in my city, so I guess you've given me something to look
Yeah.
forward to.
It's part of it. Make sure that the best information or the true, all of that information gets out there so that people aren't hearing only part of it.
One of the other things at the top of the question was the criteria. You mentioned some of those things before in terms of, the cost to defend or to move to that. But I also just want to underscore, and this is true, I think, for the entire council, that if a violation was clearly shown, the council would be united in that you would not let a violation stand. Part of the issue right now is that a violation is not, there is no evidence that a violation has occurred as of this moment with the initial demographer's report.
Very true. One of those, I've been here to where we've done many things and looked at many things. And one of those adages that we have come through about Cyprus is that it is a beautiful, no slight on your city of Orange.
That's okay.
But we've said many times over that Cyprus is just a wonderful place to live, work, and to play. And you bet we would not allow a violation of the California Voters' Right Act to just go on unchecked, to just overlook it and maybe it'll go away. No, it is clearly something that we are addressing, that we've looked at, and we've looked at over time before. Is we're aware that our community has changed. There's a area of our city known as the Sorrento Homes, beautiful area. And for those that did move into the city prior, before those homes were there were tank farms. And for those that don't even know that before, Cyprus before was, we were Dairy City. We were a lot of farms, dairy farms.
I've seen the original sign.
Yeah, and so there are many, many things. And so, yes, we're well aware that our city is changing. And again, it is something that I said before, that as our city continues to grow and evolve and change, what are the best decisions that we can make so that our city continues to grow and to be the best city possible for not just our residents, but the business community as well, for those people that also come to visit.
We all depend on each other.
Absolutely correct. And again, so to go back to that question, if there was a violation of the California Voting Rights Act, yes, we're definitely going to address that and resolve it.
Next question. Based on what I've read, no city in California has ever successfully withstood a CVRA challenge based on allegations of racially polarized voting in at-large elections. Some cities like Santa Clara have spent over $5 million fighting and still lost. Given that, voluntarily switching to district elections seems like the much more prudent course of action. Thank you very much for your comments, and I think we answered a little bit of that in our last question as well.
Right.
Why are sitting city council members voting on this decision to fight the lawsuit or change to districts? That seems like a huge conflict of interest, does it not? Can this go to a vote of the residents, or can an independent committee be formed? So both good questions.
Right.
And every city has done it differently, I would say, because I know in Anaheim it was, in the city of Santee, down in San Diego, it was a referendum because they were charter cities and it had to go to the charter, so they did actual measures on their ballot. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. In Orange, it was city council. At some of the school districts, it's been like the organizational legislative body that's made the change.
Well, again, and this is why we're reaching out to all of our residents so that we can have your input. Here's just another one of those areas where the costs occur.
Mm-hmm.
If we went to a referendum, it goes on the ballot, it costs money to put that on a ballot. And it's not anything cheap. We're talking, $100,000, $200,000
at a minimum.
And then that's still not addressing the issue. Right. And then if we have to move into districts, what is that going to cost? Now the work of a demographer to come back in and help us with that. And then we go out. And so there are a lot. Is this something that I believe the first part of their question dealt with? It seems like a lot. Is this unfair for the city council? ladies and gentlemen, please remember, you voted us into office to make the best decisions possible for all of you. And one of those decisions is to bring this to you so that we are informed, so that we know where you're at. And some of your thinking, where your thinking is at. Some people have already voiced an opinion telling us that no, this makes it sound like Cyprus is a racist, biased community, and we are not. So fight it. Well, agree. I like that, but remember, to do so
Right.
could cost potentially millions of dollars. So let's get the input of the residents. Again, this is the start, so we can make that decision.
And what's always important to note in that situation is there are lots of people, and that's again why we're doing the public forums, is that there are lots of people who don't feel that way.
Correct.
And we need to hear from everyone. So that is part of the deliberative process. All right, let's see, next question. Cypress School District went to district voting several years ago with no issues. The argument that the districts will cause division and less representation is incorrect. It has been used for our school district for a few years now with no issue. Very proud of our small school district for doing this voluntarily. So more of a comment. Thank you very much. Next question. There was some mention of how districts might be drawn if a switch to districts is made, but I didn't hear any mention of an independent redistricting committee, which many cities use to insulate the process from the political self-interest. Would it be possible to have an independent redistricting commission in Cyprus?
Anything is possible.
Anything is
The minute
possible.
the person says that many cities have done this, right, and many cities have not.
Right.
So again, this is all part of that process. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. What would it look like? Is it all residents? Is it council? Is it council, residents, and there are many things. So is that possible? It's possible. But again, folks, we're not there yet.
Let's see. Okay. Looking through questions really fast. Let's see. Okay. Why were public forums not held when deciding on how to fill Councilmember Barry's vacant position, but you are holding them for this? So I think that's kind of more probably off topic for tonight.
Right, but in a nutshell, in a response to that, is that there are processes within our city, the charter and the other laws that we have that tell us how to go about
Clearly outlined.
selecting, right.
Right.
And in that particular case, there was a process that was clear as to how we would fill a council member seat.
And for districts, going to districts or not going, we're kind of off the map right now. So
Right,
we're trying to learn on that one. So the real problem is existing council members were not elected to appoint people into vacated seats, which is what was done. A vacancy occurring soon after an election should have been filled by a candidate with the next highest votes, aka citizen's choice. I support the lawsuit as my vote was not respected. So again, more of a comment than a question. Is the mayor the only person who will be replying to questions and comments? For tonight's forum, that is the case. But at other public forums that we'll have, it might be the other council members or the mayor pro tem or several of you might happen. In addition, the city's attorney and city manager will be looking at some of the questions where they're technical in nature. So the FAQs that will be posted will be kind of a amalgamation of all of those with a lot of different expert voices weighing in. So thank you for your question. How will this redistricting study be funded? Why is this being brought to our attention now? How does this change the economic growth of Cyprus? So a couple of different questions there. Why don't we start with why are we doing it now?
Well, we're doing it now because the city was served by the attorney, by the law firm, advising us of what they saw as a violation of the California Voting Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city has, in order to respond to that properly, is to look, and we ourselves look at it. Did a violation occur? Is it occurring? And so there are many things to do that. That's part of it. And the answer specifically to your question, how's it being funded? Through the taxpayer dollars. And that's why these things are never very fun. These are monies that we're going to spend that could certainly be used elsewhere, whether it's our Parks and Recreation Department, whether it's our infrastructure, whether they're landscape issues. There are many places that we could, but the answer is the monies are coming from the city's funds. And how does this change the economic growth of Cyprus? that's a larger question.
Yeah.
Again, we're not here for that. It's not like it's going to downgrade the city. It's a matter of, folks, what this actually is, we're talking about simply is, was there a violation? Is there a violation? What do we do to resolve it if there's in fact a violation, and how to best respond to the letter?
Right. What are the pros and cons for the various methods of electing council members? Are the negatives of transitioning to a district type structure outweigh the costs of challenging the lawsuit? Good question. I'm not sure that there's a really straightforward answer, depending on where you sit on the issue.
Yeah, and folks, I can tell you, I am not here tonight to start telling you what my opinion is. My opinion, quite honestly, is going to be largely dependent or decided on what it is that you, the residents, tell us. I can tell you, like one person pointed out, well, I feel like I'm only going to be able to represent one person as who I'm voting for, versus right now I vote for everyone. Yeah, that's true. But is that always the only positive? No, there are many things. And so let's, again, wait to see what everybody tells us. And yeah, is it expensive? It could be. There are many things that could be done. Again, we're already telling you what some of these costs are. Do we know all of them just yet? No. I mean, let's say that we come to a vote of the people and all of a sudden it becomes a tie.
Right.
Well, guess what? We've got to have another. So it just, not that I think that there would be, but folks, there are just many costs that we just don't know altogether.
If Cyprus decides to implement city council districts, would the city still be required to pay Mr. Shankman and his client? Very good question. We're not in a legal dispute at this point. A lawsuit has not been filed against the city. It's
Right.
only a letter has been issued challenging and alleging there is a potential violation.
Correct. And that is an area that is for the city attorney to
Yes.
address and respond to, simply because I'm not an attorney. That's why we have the city attorney. That's his area to respond to. And the reality is, let's see where that goes, because as you pointed out, Ariana, we haven't been served with a lawsuit. We've only been sent the letter, which we've received. And that's why all of what we're doing is responding or trying to determine the best answer and how to respond to the letter.
I just want to remind those who are viewing, we're only going till 7:30 this evening. We still have a lot more questions on the screen for us to get through. So just a reminder, please don't worry if we don't get to your question. We
Right.
will post them all on the city website. We will get answers to everything. And thank you so much for participating in the process. The next question, would we still rotate who serves as mayor, or would it become a separately elected position in addition to the city council? Really good question. Not many cities have directly elected mayors in Orange County. Most actually do it the way Cypress does it.
Correct. And would we still rotate? Again, we don't know, simply because it is not something we have decided upon. Are there cities that, well, Anaheim is one. Anaheim has districts, but then they have a specific campaign for the office of mayor, and they are not the only ones. So we don't know. We're not there yet. Again, this is once we get all of the information together, when we start making those decisions, will we be able to answer that?
Right. Are you saying that no decision will be made until after this coming next election? I don't think that is the case, but.
No, we, in fact, the letter that came from Mr. Shankman's office gave us a particular time frame. Mr. Shankman was good in working with our city attorney and giving us some time to sort these things out. I know that we had some residents that felt we were meeting in secret and we couldn't make a decision, or making all these decisions. No, Mr. Shankman was good enough to extend that time, because he himself realizes these aren't decisions that you make in 5 minutes or within one meeting and one night. It takes time to respond.
I think there was also a recognition that the city was doing some of this work to assess the violation.
That's correct.
We're doing this set of public forums, and then the city will go into the deliberative process. The city council will go into the very prescribed deliberative process, which is public hearings, and then you and your colleagues talking and going, basically, deciding and debating back and forth. Then my understanding, and again, we will confirm this and put it on the city's website. Once you decide to go to districts, if you decide to go to districts, should there a better way to say it, there is a prescribed process for that as well. And I believe there's a certain amount of time that is given for for you to do that.
That's correct. So specifically in answer to the question, is a decision going to be made until after the next election? I don't know. It just depends on that time frame. Right now, the time frame that we're trying to work with is no, it'll be made prior to, because there is only a certain amount of time by which to respond to Mr. Shankman's office.
Thank you. The next question, can we expect a citywide mailer or some type of engagement regarding at-large versus district voting, provided in English, Korean, and Spanish, to seek citywide community input and help staff and consultant provide a proper recommendation? It's a great question.
And that's an easy one, actually.
Go ahead.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Thanks to you and these are, again, some of those things that we've had to decide on. Again, as I said at the beginning, our responsibility and what we're doing here is to provide the community with the best unbiased information we can, the best outreach that we can. And that means not just these forums, not just on one night of the week, but on various days of the week,
Correct.
Various locations in the city. We're trying to reach as many as possible. And in addition to that, in response directly to that question, yes, we'll have information going out to all of the residents in the city so that they have more information for them to look at. And again, as all of that will show, please, again, go back to our city's website, the cypressca.org/election system, and you'll find more information there as well, in addition to, again, all the information that's being covered tonight.
And there was an ad hoc committee put together of the city council. So there was a rather robust community outreach plan that was engaged upon there that will include media outreach, social media, actually some, out in the community, like face-to-face outreach, all of these forums, an online survey, email, newsletter. It was quite extensive. So really showing the city council was kind of committed to making sure everyone heard about this issue.
Yes, and again, and that doesn't also, not to forget, folks, all you ever have to do, again, going back to the City of Cyprus's website, all of our email addresses are there. You can reach out to us directly, send us emails, contact us, leave your messages, your comments, your questions, all of that. Trust me, that's what we're here for. We're happy to engage and to answer to the best of our ability so that you have all the information necessary to make that decision and to help us.
So we have about 15 more minutes to go. I know we still have a lot more questions. Will a transition to districts mean they will potentially have to be redrawn every 10 years like congressional districts? Great question. And it's not potential. It is that they need to be relooked at every 10 years.
Correct.
So the 10-year mark is based on the census. Every 10 years, we go through that process. It's how we look and see how our numbers have changed. Has our population grown? Has it changed? And within that, especially within districts, if you're looking at CVRA, I lost the word I was saying. If you have CVRA considerations within a city, you're going to very carefully look how your demographics have changed from an ethnicity point of view. So to make sure that a new violation doesn't occur, or that things haven't changed to an extent that the districts have to change even more. So that is something that would happen once you go to districts. You do have to look at them once the census comes through.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone certainly paying attention to the news or reading the papers have seen how the supervisorial districts here in Orange County have changed, big changes. Congressional districts on the federal level, senator, even state senatorial districts, all of those have changed because of the recent census. So yes, the simple answer to your question is yes, every 10 years, we have to look at that again.
And I'm sorry, the questions are going up and down. Can we move them up again, please? Up more? I'm missing one. There we go. You need to go up more. I'm so sorry.
Actually, that one's
okay.
So assuming we go to district elections, are we limited to 5 districts? For example, could we have 7 districts or another number? Yes, absolutely. We might even just have 4 districts, 3 districts. We don't know. If that's what we determine from the residents and all of the input we get, then again, that's where the work from the demographer helps us determine how many districts. So there really is no decision as yet that would be 3, 4, or 7, whatever that number is, correct?
And you also mentioned too, someone had asked about the mayor.
Right.
So if that becomes a directly elected seat, that's an option as well, which would increase your council by more if that was a decision that was made. Next question, why are other council members not on the public forum? We need to hear from them too. As I said tonight, because of COVID regulations and mandates, and we need to be very careful, tonight it's just the mayor and our other council members are listening. It's a really big part of this process, the public outreach process. There will be an opportunity to hear from other council members as we move through this process at the in-person forums that we'll be doing. And just a quick note, the in-person forums, which right now are set and they have locations and times and dates, can be found on the city's website as well. If just want to warn everyone, they might move based on just where we're at with our COVID numbers, but
Correct.
you know, hopefully
Hopefully we
hope for
can
better
keep them
things.
in person.
Yeah.
Because to hear from you directly, there wouldn't be that lag time. We can give you your answers directly and respond to each and every one of you.
Absolutely.
As we want to do.
How will this redistricting study be funded? Why is this being brought to our attention now? Oh, wait a minute, we got
We've
that
already
one.
answered
I'm
that
so
one.
sorry. Let's see. To make it completely unbiased and fact-based, why not get an independent redistricting commission? Which is that question was.
We've already
Please answer
answered
that
that in the
one.
sense that, yeah, we could very much do that. One of those simple questions, though, that goes to that is, well, what or who comprises that redistricting commission? And the reality is it all residents? Is it all people, demographer? That's something that, yeah, certainly can happen, and we'll make those decisions when that time comes.
Absolutely. Next question. This seems like another state of California game to swing the state further to the left by making a huge move to modify a system designed to represent the majority of citizens for the benefit of a smaller community. How does this not take away the voting power of the majority? I think that's an interesting question, but certainly with the Cbra and even with the Federal Voting Rights Act, the whole point is that we don't step on anyone's right to vote. It's such an important right that we hold as U.S. citizens.
Correct. I mean, all one ever has to look at are some of these communities that have changed over the decades.
Yes.
And nothing has ever occurred over a year or two. But over time, many communities have changed. Their demographics have changed. Their outlook has, their outlay, whether, again, Cypress, let's just stick with Cypress. Cypress used to be many, many dairy farms throughout the lay of the land. And over time, I mean, you can look at one of the photographs of Cypress College when it laid its foundation, and right across the way was a dairy farm. So the reality is, yeah, all of these things have changed. It's a matter of, but as that change has occurred, we don't want to leave out anyone, any community, any group, any particular anyone. That's why this is something we're looking at. And again, wanting the input of all of our residents.
The next question, can you post the demand letter on the city website or Facebook or make it publicly available? Great question. We'll check on that and make sure that we can make that available.
Right.
At some point in the process, it probably will become available. We'll see how quickly that can happen.
And then we'll get that from the city attorney and city manager. They'll let us know that.
Next question, will the results from the outreach be public? Yes, it will. A number of things will be public. You'll be seeing it happen as we go. Some of it, as far as the final report on the outreach, all the effort and comment from the public will be done as a final report to the city council at the end of this process. If we move to a district model and a council member steps down, similar to Member Berry, what will the process be to fill the seat? And this is similar to questions we've already answered.
Right. And again, folks, that process is already there, has been there. And in fact, I'm trying to remember, I think
it's
it was
outlined in your city charter.
Well, yeah, and in Measure P, which was on the very same ballot when now Mayor Pro Tem Ann Hertz Mallory and Councilwoman Marquez were voted into office, that particular measure was there, and the voters, 16,000 of our voters, our residents, voted to change that process or to give us, the city council, more time to select that person in the manner that we did, from 30 days to 60 days. So again, and a lot of people, and that's just another example of how every day, the citizens every day don't understand or know of all of those processes. And in the last 7 years, anytime somebody's had a question, I've taken the time, I've made the best effort to show, to explain, to describe, to show and inform, because there are many things that they don't know. And that's just one that, they felt that the runner-up should have received it. Well, again, there is a process already described in our city charter that tells us that, but again, 16,000 residents voted to extend that time from 30 to 60 days
Right.
to allow that process to occur.
We're almost at the end of our time. So a last question that we have is, city engagement has always been a concern of mine. How many people are participating on tonight's event across Zoom, Facebook Live, and YouTube? And the elves in the back of the room have told me it's about 85. And then a couple of housekeeping items to that is that this entire program this evening will actually has been recorded. We will post it on the city's website, as are the videos that you saw. The videos will be posted in Spanish and Korean as well. And then any of the questions that came in, all of this transcript will also be posted on the city website. So everyone will have a chance to see all the questions, and anything that we didn't get to answer, we'll work either with the experts or the city attorney to answer for our residents.
Well, and I would even add to that, folks, for those of you that are watching right now, you are our best assist here in telling your neighbor, telling your friends, telling the other residents to tune in, to watch, to go on the particular websites and look at it yourselves. This number of 85, I could tell you that, yeah, it is such a small number, but difficult as it is, this is always the problem with public engagement, because a lot of people don't always tune in or don't always get themselves involved to all of this. Sadly, some of them are only going to hear a portion. They're going to see these community web pages. I remember when I was first elected in office, it was when we had Councilwoman, now she's termed off, Mary Ellen Yark, wonderful lady. She was our mayor at the time, and we had a public forum. We had one open to the public at our park at Oak Knoll. And as difficult as it was, our city attorney, our city manager, city staff went through all this effort to have us all up there and be ready to answer questions directly to the public. Sadly, we only had about 40 people from the entire city show up. So as difficult as it is, these are the numbers we're familiar with. But folks, spread that word, get other people to get on the websites and hear and see the information for yourselves. Please do not rely on just community web pages and forums where a lot of times the information is inaccurate or only half the information.
So thank you all for your participation tonight, and just the flurry of questions. That was exactly what we were hoping for. Again, as I said, and the mayor said, all of this will be posted on the city website. In addition, some of the things that will be coming public in the next few days is going to be a survey link that you can share around via email and other channels. We'll be collecting information that way, as well as additional public outreach, as we already mentioned. 2 more public forums are scheduled. One will be at the community center. I believe that one is on a Saturday. So we'll have another one that's in the early evening. So again, switching up the times to try and make sure everyone has a chance and an opportunity to participate, and also in different areas of the city.
Correct.
And then this entire program will be posted in its entirety, so you can go back and take a look at everything that was presented this evening. And with that, Mr. Mayor?
Well, that is all the time that we have tonight. So thank you for joining us for this important conversation. A special thanks to all for those who submitted questions and comments, and also to my colleagues for joining me and listening to our residents tonight. Ariana, thank you for helping us moderate tonight. Thank you a lot.